Mayor of Washington, D.C. Today I'm joined by members of my public safety team. I am providing an update to the community on two officer-involved shootings and sadly one that resulted in a fatality. As with any officer-involved shooting, both of these cases will go through a thorough investigation to determine if the officers acted lawfully and within their training. Let me first start by extending my condolences to the family and loved ones of Antoine Gilmore. I spoke to his family this morning and expressed our deepest sympathies. Any loss of life is heartbreaking, and we know that for a family to go through this type of experience is especially traumatic. While we continue to investigate the circumstances surrounding the interactions with Mr. Gilmore, we have the officer's body-worn camera was activated, and in the public's interest, in the interest of public safety, I will be releasing that footage. We are asking that the press and public be mindful that there is an active investigation in a grieving family, and we will thoroughly investigate and transmit our investigation to the Office of the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia. It is our responsibility to the public to investigate thoroughly and impartially this officer's actions and adherence to NPD policy. I can assure every member of the public and the family will happen. I want to turn to Chief Conti now to share additional information, and then we can take on-topic questions.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments will be really brief, and then we can move to questions. Again, with the mayor, I offer the deepest sympathies and condolences to the family. Obviously, Metropolitan Police officers, we are responsible for public safety in the city, and sometimes, as a result of our duties, there's force involved. We are committed to transparency. We are committed to accountability. We are committed to making sure that our communities are safe. Unfortunately, sometimes as a result of our duties, we are required to use force, or members use force, but in those instances, we must be committed to transparency in the actions of our officers. And our mayor has stated we are committed to that as a city. So I'll take any questions. The mayor can take any questions that you may have at this point. The first incident, in the first incident, one of our officers, the incident that occurred in the 1700 block of Minnesota Avenue Southeast, one of our officers was alerted to an individual who was on private property. That individual was engaged in the use of illegal narcotics. Our officer engaged that individual, and as he engaged that individual, he was actually very compassionate with the person, just told him, instead of arresting him, just told him that he shouldn't be doing that in the space where he was. He encouraged the person to please leave the area. The person complied. As the person was leaving the area and the officer went back to his vehicle, he noticed that the person had what appeared to be a firearm secreted in the back of his pants, and he had a tank top t-shirt on, so the officer was able to see the imprint of the firearm as the person was walking away. The officer, in this case, radioed for additional units to respond to assist him as he kind of trailed the individual in the vehicle. The officer then attempted to engage this individual a second time. As he went to engage the individual a second time, the firearm was pulled on the officer. We know that the individual fired a shot Thankfully, that shot did not take effect. It did not hit our officer. It actually struck a nearby vehicle, and our officer returned fire in defense of his life. He returned fire, striking this individual. He was taken to an area hospital where he was treated with non-life-threatening injuries, and he's also being charged in court. I believe he may have had his case presented on yesterday.
Okay, any questions?
Paul?
Um, Can you just give us your impression of what you saw and heard on the body-worn camera videos in the New York Avenue incident?
Yeah, for the New York Avenue incident, and I think that the videos will show that. Obviously we're still in the very early stages of this investigation, but it's very difficult to see through the lens of the officer, the one officer in this case that fired. It's very difficult to see what that officer was seeing. What did he perceive to be the threat at that point? I think that will come out in the investigation ultimately as we go through this process. As the mayor mentioned, we have a standard process where these cases are packaged and then forwarded to our United States Attorney's Office for review, and then a determination is made at that point. At this point, the officer has not been compelled to make a statement. Certainly, as we look at this video and others and other incidents from around the country, quite frankly, we look at how we improve upon what it is we do as law enforcement officers. But it is just very difficult to see from that officer's vantage point through the lens of the ballistic shield that he had deployed. It's very difficult to see what he saw at the point where he fired his weapon.
And I know the mayor said you don't want people to jump to conclusions because everything is still so fresh. However, your general orders policy says you cannot fire into a moving vehicle, which did happen according to the body-worn camera video. And then the pistol was found in the man's waistband. Are we to read anything into that?
So I would say that you're correct that firing out a moving vehicle is inconsistent with our policies. I would not draw any conclusions from the positioning of where the firearm was at the time it was recovered. But to your point, we do have a policy with respect to shooting at or from moving vehicles.
Any other questions?
After the vehicle crash, you said that you didn't recover anything beyond from his person besides that gun,
That's correct. Only the firearm was recovered, yes.
and the gun was registered.
And I should add in that because that was what was immediately recovered. So there's still, again, the investigation process that's going on. A search warrant has to be executed on the vehicle, and they have to go through the entire vehicle, and that has not happened yet. It's, again, we're just over 24 hours in this case. So there could be other things in the vehicle, but immediately what was taken out was the firearm.
And the gun was not registered to Mr. Gilmore?
It was not registered to Mr. Gilmore. The firearm was registered to someone else.
Is it safe to say he illegally held that gun since we understand he didn't have a permit either?
It is safe to say that, yes, sir.
Is the way that the department handled this report of an unconscious person approaching the car, knocking on the windows, and then proceeding to fire, the way that all of this has played out and from what you've seen on body camera videos, is that how you would like to see these reports play out, or is there something that you've noticed that officers could have or should have done differently?
So I think those are things that will come out in the investigation. We're always looking for ways to improve upon what we do. We not only look at MPD actions or officers' use of force, we look at national instances where there are use of force and look at how we can learn from those incidents. I think in this case, we'll do the same thing here. The U.S. Attorney has their responsibility, but we do not wait until their investigation is completed to look at how we improve on what we do. We will look at that. We will incorporate any things that need to be adjusted or that we need to focus more on in training. We'll make those adjustments, and we'll do that internally within our agency.
Was there anything that stands out as concerning to you at this point?
Well, I think, as Paul mentioned just a few minutes ago, we have a when we see things that are inconsistent with our training, as we mentioned, we don't shoot at moving vehicles. When you see things like that, those are obviously things that we have to improve upon. But again, when you talk about tactics, those are all things that's a continual assessment of what the actions were of the officer, what that officer saw at the time that he fired his weapon. It will be looked at through that lens, and we're not at that point in the investigation to draw the conclusions on that about what was right and what was wrong.
Though the protocol is to not shoot into a moving vehicle, when he started driving forward, was he driving towards the officers or was he driving towards the road? Did the vehicle then become a threat to the officer?
It's hard to say from the vehicle. I think that'll come out in the investigation. Again, we look at trajectory of rounds, how they entered, that whole thing, and we'll have to work through as part of the investigation. When I say we, meaning our federal partners, that'll be part of their investigative process. You know, as they look at this through the lens that they need to look at this through to make a determination about whether or not this is something that they will proceed criminally on. Those assessments will be made at that time as we move through this.
Do you have any?
Do you have, first of all, can you clarify why you don't have a statement from the shooting officer? And then secondly, do you have statements from the other officers who were there?
So we don't have a statement from the shooting officer, and that is in part because this matter could very well be a criminal prosecution, and if it is a criminal prosecution like anyone else, we do not compel people to make statements at that point. If for whatever reason this case does not go to a criminal prosecution, is referred for administrative handling, then a statement can be compelled. But at this point, at this stage of the investigation, we would not normally have a statement from the involved officer. We would get statements from the officers who are at the scene. We would have statements from those officers, but those statements will be compiled, those statements then transferred over to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and that's, again, part of their review and making a determination about how they need to proceed in this case.
The officer who fired their weapon, is this the first time that he's been involved in an incident like this where he's been in an officer-involved shooting?
To my knowledge, yes. But that's just on my memory. I don't recall any other instances where he's been involved in any type of fatal shooting or anything like that.
And all 10 shots came solely from his gun?
Yes, that's correct.
And do you have any sense right now why the officer fired? I know you said you don't have a statement from that officer, but from any other information gathering at this point?
So it would be through, again, I mean, in this case, one officer fired. So it's reasonable to conceive that this is the officer who identified a threat or something like that. Again, that's an assumption on my part, not having a statement for him. And again, I think any questioning down that lane, really gets us into murky waters about why he did or did not, or why he fired his weapon in this case.
And that weapon that you're referring to, the gun in his waistband, that was on his right side waistband?
That's correct.
And at any point, do you know if that gun was removed from the waistband?
I don't know that.
And where was the gun found after the car crashed into the tree and he was moved to the hospital?
Still on the right side in the waistband area. Yes.
Can you comment on the warrant that was out for his arrest?
So there was a warrant out for his arrest for ADW gun, which occurred in October of last year. We obtained a warrant for his arrest in April of this year. Unfortunately, he was not. He had not been taken into custody prior to this incident, but there was an open warrant for his arrest.
And the car was not the car he was driving was not registered to him either, right?
The car was not registered to him. That's correct.
And the gun was purchased from South Carolina and not reported stolen?
The gun was purchased a couple of years ago in South Carolina. It was not reported stolen, but also not registered to the individual, to Mr. Gilmore in this case.
Are you able to share some more information about Mr. Gilmore's state when officers approached the car?
I would say it again?
His state when officers approached the car. I know the word unconscious has.
Yeah, well, he was awake at some point during the interaction. Initially, when the officers approached the car, we've been using a bunch of different terms around this place, and I think this kind of got misconstrued in the media a bit. Yeah, he was initially asleep at a point in time when, as they received a call to respond to that location, but there did come a time when he was awakened during the course of the engagement with the officers.
Was that only after the tapping on the window, Chief?
That he was awake, yes, after the tapping on the window, yes.
And you say your protocol is to not shoot into a moving vehicle, and unfortunately that happened. What would you have liked to see happen yesterday, or what could have happened instead?
Well, what I would like to see is that we never have to use force. That's what I would like to see. It's unfortunate, especially in a major city where we're experiencing an uptick in violent crime, specifically gun crime. I would like to not see us use force, but when we do use force, what I'd like to see is us be transparent as a police department, as a government, about the facts of what happened. And I believe that that's what we're doing in this case. We're giving the public the facts as we know them right now, allowing this case to go through its process so that we will see whatever outcome comes from this.
It's been a long 24 hours for you guys as officers in the district.
Yeah.
How are you guys processing everything that's happened over the last 24 hours?
It has been a very eventful last 24 hours. We're committed to the city. I'm committed to the city, and I'm committed to keep coming in here every day, doing what I do to make the residents and the visitors of the District of Columbia safe. That's priority number one for me, each and every day. And whether that's through things that we need to do internally with our officers, or things that we do external in community, I'm built for this. This is what I do. So while it has been a rough 24 hours, we're committed to the safety and security of the residents and visitors to the District of Columbia.
Thank you.